Hello, my name is Anne Ray, and I am the lead for the Office of Research and Development's Nutrients and HABs research. And I will be facilitating today's webinar. And first, we wanted to just mention that EPA does host several webinar series dedicated to delivering the latest information and training on our cutting edge research. And several of those are coming up. They're listed here. There's one or a couple in a few weeks from the Healthy and Resilient Communities, as well as the Tools and Resources webinar. That one is actually also a nutrients webinar. It's the Nutrients Explorer that Robert Sabo will be presenting. Later in March, there's the Air, Climate, and Energy Research webinar, looking at wildfires, the effects of wildfires on air and water quality. And then the Small Drinking Water Systems webinar looking at harmful algal blooms. And then finally, at the end of the month will be the next harmful algal blooms, hypoxia, and nutrients research webinar series, which will also focus on harmful algal blooms this month, looking at the genomic indicators. Next slide, please. So today we have Dr. Yongping Yuan, and she's going to present two studies looking at nitrogen and phosphorus and looking at the need for government agencies to work together to address possible economic losses due to implementation of lower fertilizer rates for water quality improvement. Yongping is a research hydrologist. She's at EPA's Office of Research and Development, and her research primarily focuses on nutrient reduction approaches, including evaluating the effectiveness of agricultural conservation practices and urban BMPs for water quality improvement, developing multimedia modeling systems to demonstrate nutrient management systems, and improving overall environmental quality, and assessing the impact of climate and land use change on water quality and quantity. Yongping holds a PhD in agricultural engineering from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and an MS in water conservation and civil engineering from Beijing Agricultural Engineering University. And with that, I'll hand it over to Yongping to present today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
You should be able to share the slides from your screen.
Do I need to share it again?
I'm not seeing the slides. I think they went away. So I need you to, can you share the slides from your screen?
Yeah, I can. Let me. Can you see?
There we go. Yeah, they're not in presentation mode.
How about now?
Yep.
All right.
There we go. Good job.
Thank you for your introduction, Anne. So first of all, I would like to acknowledge my past hours postdoc, Brock Cameros and Wenlong Liu. Brock contributed significantly on the nutrient management for phosphorus. Wenlong Liu contributed for the nutrient management for nitrogen. So to increase agricultural production, fertilizers such as phosphorus and nitrogen are applied to agricultural fields. So ideally, those applied nutrients would be used by plants. But in reality, after precipitation, water interacts with soil and the nutrients in the soil. So excess water, such as we call runoff, carrying soil particles and dissolved nutrients, leaving the agricultural fields all the way to the streams, such as big water rivers and the lakes and reservoirs. Sometimes those can reach to the coastal, into the ocean. So studies concluded that excess nutrient fluxes from agriculture fields have been linked to the occurrence of the eutrophication, leading to half algae blooms and the hypoxia zone. So one example is the Gulf of Mexico. The size of the hypoxia zone can be several thousand square miles to over 10,000 square miles. So the hypoxia zone is also called the dead zone, which is an area with low oxygen, chaos fish, and marine life. Another example is the freshwater Lake Erie, famous Lake Erie. So the harmful algae blooms in Lake Erie are linked with phosphorus, excess phosphorus, particularly soluble reactive phosphorus. And so to combat this issue caused by the nutrients leaving agricultural fields to our water systems, so agricultural conservation practices have been implemented to reduce their loss from agricultural fields. This has been significantly challenging because first, estimating if those conservation practices are effective is very difficult. And which one is effective, which is not, is very difficult. Also, which one is the most effective? Also, how we place them to make them more cost effective. Those are serious challenges we have been facing. So that's comes this research. Essentially, our management strategies need to be further advanced to protect the water for consumption, recreation, and ecological integrity. So we need more insights on the performance effectiveness of the agricultural conservation practices, in short, ACPs. So in past several years, I have been focusing on evaluating the effectiveness of conservation practices. I chaired and organized, as a guest editor, organized a special collection for the transactions of the ASAB, Agriculture and Biological Engineering. So we published 12 papers total. Here listed the 10 of them, and listed all the agricultural conservation practice, their USDA Natural Resource Conservation Code, and the citation. So for today, I focus on the nutrient management for nitrogen and the nutrient management for phosphorus. So when we talk about nutrient management, which is code 590, we focus on 4 R's. Essentially, in this graph here, right fertilizer source, right fertilizer amount, rate, right place, put it in at the right place at the right time. So we emphasize, economic benefit as well as environmental benefit, also social benefit. So this is the objective of those 2 studies. One focuses on nutrient management for nitrogen, essentially looking at how nitrogen nutrient management can affect nitrate and nitrogen loss from subsurface drainage, and how phosphorus nutrient management can affect the dissolved reactive phosphorus export from the agricultural fields. So let's focus on the nitrogen first. So as I mentioned in the beginning, the Gulf of Mexico, the hypoxia there, mainly studies prove that it's mainly caused by the up Mississippi River Basin, the intensive agricultural production. So this shows the Midwest, the 12 states in the Midwest. So for nitrogen, we focused on those states. We focus on the mainly agriculturally dominated states with continuous corn and all corn rotation with soybean, all corn rotation with wheat, all rotation with both. And we also focus on the fields with subsurface drainage, because the nitrate and nitrogen from subsurface drainage has been identifying the major causes for the hypoxia in the Gulf of Mexico. So after the intensive literature review and data extraction, data analysis, this is the table. We summarize the data. And essentially, we also categorize the data. For example, for the fertilizer rate, we categorized into 4 groups. Essentially, the quantiles, those are based on the data availability. So very high means the application rate is greater than 200 kilograms per hectare. Low means the application rate is less than 134 kilogram per hectare. Also, this is a rate group, and the sources we categorized into inorganic and organic. Organic mainly refers to the liquid manure and the solid manure, and the other is those studies they did not specify the fertilizer source or no fertilizer was applied. For application methods, categorized the injected. This mainly refer to those liquid manure injected into the soil, incorporated and surface applied. So when surface applied after tillage can be incorporated into the soil. And another category is banded, which is like initial fertilization. They put a band 2 inch above or 2 inch below the seed. So with this, I will talk some of the results from this intensive literature review and data analysis. This shows your responses of crop yields and nitrogen losses to fertilization rates. So see the x-axis indicates the fertilization rate, low, moderate, high, very high. And this here shows the crop yield, responses of crop yield to those fertilization rate group. This one shows the responses of the nitrogen to those fertilization rate group. So what I want to point out is here, see from the low to moderate, you see significant increase for the crop corn here yield, but from moderate to high, not much, right? High to very high, a little bit. And for the responses of nitrogen loss at the lower rate, not very obvious. As the rate increases at this here, you see much higher loss with a high rate from with a very high rate from high rate. This one shows the responses of the crop yield and the nitrogen loss to fertilizer sources. And the green is showing the organic, the purple showing the inorganic. So essentially, looking at the yield, organic fertilizers boost the crop yield. Also, it enhances the nitrogen losses for all this fertilization group, except the very high group. This slide shows you the impacts of the application method on crop yield and nitrogen losses. So for this crop yield, the incorporated at the low rate has a higher crop yield, but for the rest, the injected is almost the same, about the same as the incorporated. It's just two extreme. Here, the low and the very high, you see the difference. For the middle ones, the difference is not very obvious. For the nitrogen losses, the injected at a lower rate, injected reduce nitrogen loss, but not with those groups. This one shows the impacts of split fertilization on crop yield and nitrogen losses. Yeah, crop yield essentially not much difference. So I didn't show here, only showing the nitrogen responses of nitrogen losses to the split fertilization. split fertilization means more than once. So the single just one time fertilization during the entire growing season. So the difference is not very obvious, except this one, the high group. High group, we see higher nitrogen loss with the split application. For the rest group, is very subtle. Difference is lower, but the difference is very subtle. So some of the timing of the crop yields and the nitrogen losses to the fertilization timing, because we did not find the obvious trend or data. So overall, this is the studies has inconsistent observation. Some shows higher with the spring application, some shows higher with the fall application. So essentially, other factors such as the rainfall and the rainfall pattern, fertilization rate has a stronger impact than the timing. So summary and conclusions on the nitrogen nitrogen nutrient management. So with the higher fertilization rates, corn yield and the nitrogen loads and the nitrogen concentration all increased. And organic fertilizers were found to significantly boost the corn yields as well as the nitrogen losses compared to the inorganic fertilizers at compatible application rates. And we also investigate so how the nitrogen content was calculated with the inorganic fertilizer. With the organic fertilizer, there are some inconsistencies there too. So essentially, those brought some uncertainty. Fertilizer injection and incorporation showed no significant difference in nitrogen losses in subsurface drainage. Split fertilization was effective in reducing nitrogen loss at a lower fertilization rate, but not at higher fertilization rates. In terms of the fertilization timing, results were mixed relative to nitrogen losses between fall application and spring application. Depends on other factors such as the fertilization rate, source, and the climate conditions. So this concludes the findings with the nitrogen nutrient management. Now let's come to the nutrient management of phosphorus. We started with the Middle West, up Mississippi River Basin, Middle West too. Then we tried to focus on the Ohio Lake Erie due to the significant concerns, water concerns with Lake Erie. And we found some information. I would like to present the one, which is also a review paper. And this review focused on the phosphorus losses from phosphorus nutrient management in tile subsurface drainage. Then the observation or key points from this paper is P application, timing methods are important. Yeah, they have very limited data, and those limited data restricted any conclusions can be made from this study. Yeah, phosphorus data were much less relative to the nitrogen information. So this is a gap for phosphorus studies. And essentially, non-quantitative information will withdraw from the study. It's all quantitative. Then another one was performed in the Lake Erie, in Ohio Lake Erie, and by the scientists from USDA ARS. So essentially, he had edge of field P losses data for 20 row cropped fields. And the key points from this study is do not apply organic fertilizers, and the soil test P should be conducted before applying phosphorus fertilizers, and avoid placement prior to large rainfall events, and applying fertilizers to the subsurface. So again, some qualitative recommendations, no qualitative recommendations, no quantitative information was drawn from the study too. So from those, we started to do a more kind of a broad, extensive literature review, data analysis. So we, again, not a lot of information, not as much as nitrogen, but we tried to summarize based on the plot studies and field scale studies. So first, again, we extract all the information, the data, we summarized and categorized the information based on the fertilization rate, fertilizer sources, and application method. So again, this is based on this data we have. We categorized as this 4 unfertilized, low, moderate, and high. High means the P2O5 greater than 160 kilogram per hectare. Low means the P2O5 less than 80 kilogram per hectare. Yeah, if we calculate this in terms of only phosphorus, is less than 35 kilogram per hectare. Regarding to the sources, again, inorganic and organic, and application are categorized as surface and subsurface. So unfortunately, we could not have much data on the crop yield. So we didn't have the crop yield response to the phosphorus fertilization rate. This is the DRP, means dissolved reactive phosphorus response to the fertilization rate. This is the 4 rate we categorized. And this is the plot study. It shows the phosphorus concentration in the surface runoff. Yeah, essentially, among those 3 categories, low, moderate, and high, high has a higher dissolved reactive phosphorus loss. And I would like to point out that for those plot studies, usually they apply for the fertilizer, phosphorus fertilizer, then they do this artificial rainfall, and within 72 hours of the application. So it's a kind of accurate response. This is a comparison between the phosphorus response and the nitrogen response to the fertilization rate groups. So essentially, you don't see the difference here among those 2, but for the nitrogen, you have an increase as the fertilization rate increases. This shows the dissolved reactive phosphorus responses to the fertilizer sources. So the red is organic. This orange brown is inorganic. Yeah, not much difference, but with organic, a little higher DRP. This one shows the response to application methods, and this is a surface applied, and this is a subsurface applied. This difference is significant. So surface applied results much more DRP, the higher DRP concentrations in surface runoff. This then we put all the data together. Essentially, rates, source, and application methods, put all the data together, See this one, this side on the left is the subsurface applied, and on the right side is the surface applied. So essentially, this allows you to see, for example, this, you get the highest dissolved reactive phosphorus concentration is from the organic application, surface applied organic application with a high rate. Give you kind of the overall view. And subsurface applied is all much lower than the surface applied. So now let's focus on the field studies, results from the field studies. For field studies, although we did not find a lot of field studies, but with limited information we found, some look at the surface dissolved reactive phosphorus in surface runoff. Some looked at the dissolved reactive phosphorus in subsurface drainage. So essentially, see the this fertilization rate, low, moderate, high. We don't see much difference. Then for the subsurface drainage, we see even the dissolved reactive phosphorus loss is lower with a higher rate. So we pondered this a lot. I'll talk more later. So this is comparison again with the responses of phosphorus to the fertilization rate and the responses of nitrate and nitrogen to the fertilization rate. Again, you see the obvious increase as the fertilization rate increases with nitrate and nitrogen, but not the same for dissolved reactive phosphorus. This one shows the sources, the responses to the sources. This blue is organic, and this green is the inorganic. Essentially, again, the organic increases the phosphorus losses from the fields for both surface runoff and subsurface drainage. This shows the application, also application methods. For the surface runoff, no difference. For the subsurface drainage, you see higher DRP losses with subsurface application. Again, we put all the data together. We try to see an overview, essentially for the field studies, field scale studies, and this is the subsurface applied. This is surface applied. That the effect of the subsurface applied is not as obvious as the plot studies. But again, I would like to point here. So with the surface application and even with the moderate application, we see a high dissolved reactive concentration. Yeah, we pondered, we looked at other literatures. Essentially, the response of phosphorus to nutrient management is different from nitrogen. The key here is soil test soil testing phosphorus is an important factor. Essentially, even with the low application, if your soil testing phosphorus is high, it still can have high losses, dissolved reactive phosphorus losses from agricultural fields. So some conclusions here. So for the acute dissolved reactive phosphorus, which those are from those plot studies, application method and fertilization rate appeared to be the most influential factors. And of course, so the over applying essentially, especially for organic fertilizers, will increase the risk of the DRP losses to downstream water bodies. And again, the literature is limited. Yeah, we need more research. So this one is for both nitrogen and phosphorus, some conclusions and recommendation. So reducing the rate is the key, essentially among these 4 Rs. And reducing the rate may lead to results in reducing the crop yield, which makes this very hard for farmers to accept. That's why government agencies such as USDA and EPA should work together to address this issue. So more recommendations on the field studies and the future field studies. Essentially, we need a more comprehensive data collection to do a better evaluation. So data collection should include the soil properties and the crop yield and land management practices, of course, water quality and some economic information. So we also can evaluate the cost effectiveness, better to evaluate the cost effectiveness. This shows some ongoing efforts with EPA and the USDA. EPA non-point source program working with USDA has significantly supported the project implementation for the conservation practices implementation, also for the planning, documenting successes. Of course, all this needs local partners and voluntary landowners' action. Some examples of the collaboration ongoing includes the National Water Quality Initiative, Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, Chesapeake Bay programs, and the Mississippi River Basin Gulf of Mexico Hypoxia Task Force. This is a snapshot showing the funded programs here. Essentially, those are the funded over years by EPA. Those are targeted pollutants. This shows some co-benefits from those practices. So recognizing the co-benefits opens more opportunities for funding for implementation. And this slide shows those projects over years mainly focus on the 12 HAC digital watershed and focus on the critical source area targeting, and adoption rates is a collaboration efforts. So this is some reference. I think this is my last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Yongping. That was a very nice talk. We do have a few questions that have come in, and I will start asking some, and we'll see how far we can get through them. A few questions just in general on the nitrogen study. I think these are just some clarifying questions. With the split fertilizer for the nitrogen, what was the plan for that? Was it ammonia in early planting and UAN and then ammonia again in the fall, or were there multiple splits? Do you have those details?
Some it can be any types of nitrogen fertilizers, and split means more than once. We see probably no more than 3 times, usually twice. Yeah, we just combined more than once into one group, single application into another group.
Thank you. Do fertilization, injection, and incorporation applications refer to both organic and inorganic fertilizers?
The injection refers to the organic, mainly the organic manure, and the incorporation can be both.
And do the organic fertilizers include biosolids from wastewater treatment plants at any of the sites?
No,
You
only the manure, agriculture feeds those stocks.
Okay. Let's see. And then I guess moving into some of the phosphorus, just the questions in terms of monitor or the details of the methods. For phosphorus fertilization rate classifications, is there a corresponding phosphorus soil index data, low, medium, high, at any of the sites?
No, that's a missing part. Yeah, we
Okay.
wish we could have that information, but we don't. That's why on the recommendation slide, I think future studies, we should document that before we apply fertilizers.
Were DRP concentrations reported as phosphorus or phosphate?
Phosphate.
Um, and then let's see. On surface applied organic phosphorus, was there a growing crop in the plot, such as corn or a cover crop, cereal rye, anything like that?
No, we don't have that detailed information. Mainly those surface applied mainly refer to the before planting. That's all we know. Yes, some even they didn't even specify that.
Okay. Let's see. There's a lot of questions that just came in all at once, so I'm trying to scan them.
We got time.
Okay. Oh, okay. We do. What are the reasons that organic fertilizer releases more phosphorus than other categories?
Very good question. Yeah, we looked. It may not be organic fertilizers released more. It's may because organic fertilizers applied. When you quantify for example, when you quantify the nitrogen content and the phosphorus content, there are uncertainties there. So maybe it was applied more, or maybe it's the liquid, solid combined. It's just a lot of uncertainty there. So those are after rain easily released. For example, the liquid manure.
Can you comment on the model simulations that produce the same result from different initial conditions? So the existing agricultural management scenarios?
I don't have the simulation results here. The results presented here are all from the field observations from the literature, published papers. So not sure which slide do you refer for this one?
I don't know. That's all the information I have. Let's see. Do you have any findings or conclusions on why the organic forms of fertilizer have greater losses for both nitrogen and phosphorus?
Yeah, great question. Again, I think it's again the liquid and solid the uncertainties there. Another uncertainty is the amount of nitrogen in the manure, amount of phosphorus in the manure. There's several methods to calculate that. So I think the over application, maybe they applied more than needed.
That makes sense. For phosphorus subsurface tile drainage, why do you think there was a higher DRP at low fertilizer application rates than at high fertilizer application rates?
Yeah, great question. I think it's soil accumulation, soil testing phosphorus. So again, when your soil is saturated with phosphorus, even with low application, it could have high phosphorus loss. So essentially, the soil testing phosphorus is very important for this kind of studying. Unfortunately, those studies, they did not provide any information on soil phosphorus testing. So that's kind of the limitations, those studies.
Thank you. Let's see. On your last slide, you recommended monitoring at the Huck 12 scale watersheds and completing water quality monitoring 5 to 7 years following high rates of practice adoption. How was the high rate of practice adoption defined? Like, for example, the percent of total cropland acres, or do you know that?
This slides I got from the OW, Office of Water. And so your questions is about the high level of practice adoption. Well, I'm not sure what. Yeah, those again, those are voluntary. Depends on the the farmers. Voluntary. That's a goal. And with cost sharing, like USDS, EPA significantly supported implementation in the past. Yeah, that's a goal for the high adoption, high level of adoption, in hope of achieve the water quality goals. Provide safe drinking water.
Thank you. And another question about crop yield in the phosphorus study. Do you have any observations relating to the effect of limiting fertilizers on crop yield?
On phosphorus, I think overall we just found one very, very limited information. That's why we could not have any conclusions or anything, present. And some studies also show if your soil testing P is very high, even with low fertilization, you still get a good yield. So consistent with the loss, I think. Essentially, the high soil testing phosphorus means high phosphorus available for crops too.
Did you look at the soil phosphorus fractions or soil phosphorus accumulation after applying fertilizer?
No, because they did not, from the studies we gathered, not that information is not available. Yeah, we would love to look at those information.
Let's see. Unfertilized fields seem to show DRP losses at levels that, if found in local rivers and streams, would exceed some states' in-stream numeric water quality criteria for phosphorus. Is there an explanation for the DRP losses on unfertilized fields? And is this loss expected in all soils at all times?
So you refer to this one? That one, I think. Maybe that one. Yeah, that's a great question. Unfertilized means during their studying period. So they did not record the previously before the study started. So again, I'm thinking it's still the accumulation of the phosphorus in the soil. Again, I think soil testing P is one key parameter, and essentially to provide better results or conclusions for this kind of study. That's why we need a longer monitoring period, longer studying period. But due to the funding, usually those studies, they just have two or 3 years data, because they are expensive. Collecting data is very expensive.
And then there's a few questions. I'm just kind of mash them up into one about the study's location. So I'm not sure if you said in the beginning where the study sites were, but can you speak to that at all?
Good question. I showed a map for the nitrate and nitrogen that was focused on the Middle West, because we found we collected enough information data to do the analysis to make some conclusions. For phosphorus, very limited data, essentially across all the US, wherever we can find. I think also some from Canada, North American, yeah. Plot studies, field studies. Originally we wanted to focus on field studies, but it was just not a lot of information. That's why we included the plot studies too. Yeah, it's all over North America.
Okay. And then there's a couple questions on the critical source areas. Can you remind everybody how you define those?
Great question. Although this one did not focus on that, and since I have done a lot of research on evaluating the agricultural conservation practices, so critical source area is the area, in my opinion, we should target to achieve maximum benefit. Essentially, critical areas are those areas produce higher nutrient loss than the other areas.
And then another question relates to this is for the nitrate study. They were surprised to see that nitrate loss with the fall application was not significantly greater than the spring application. And can you speculate on why there was not a significant increase in nitrate loss with the fall application? Because this seems to go against the conventional wisdom related to fertilizer application.
Yeah, very good questions. Those are our, we tried hard to address those. First, because nitrate and nitrogen loss focused on the Middle West, the first is really depends on your rainfall, precipitation timing, and distribution. Essentially, even you wait until spring to apply, after the application, shown rainfall happened, it still caused significant losses. This is the first. Essentially, your climate is one of the important factor. Then another is your rate. Essentially, essentially for the higher rate, really doesn't matter from what we found. For lower rate, maybe spring application reduces the losses, has a lower losses than the fall application. But once at a high and a very high rate, this doesn't matter when you apply. It's very high. The loss is very high for nitrate and nitrogen. You can't tell the difference.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. If you have...
in summary, essentially the climate condition and the rate overtaking the timing effects.
It's interesting that you found that. I think that's important. There are some questions on soil type, and I'm not sure that you have this information, but you can just say, how does the soil size and type differences get accounted for in the studies? Do the soil types affect the nutrient crop uptake from applications? And are there differences between soil types and the uptake of nitrogen and phosphorus?
Yeah, very good question. No, we could not have found much information on that. But for the nitrate and nitrogen, we focus on those states in the upper Mississippi River Basin. I think they are more kind of clay loam, like Illinois, and I know Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, probably the similar kind of type. And we just don't have the information to differentiate or any impact from the soil property on the losses. Yeah, that's one of my recommendation too. We future if we found more field studies in the future, we should ask for that kind of information to provide a better evaluation.
Yeah, and I found that, since you found out about the soil test phosphorus, that's an important contributor as well.
Right.
Yeah. Do you have any results on the effect of phosphorus application rates on crop yields?
No, we just probably have 1 point or 2 point. No. Again, I think a soil testing P should be looked first. If the soil testing P is above like 50 ppm, essentially it doesn't matter you apply phosphorus or not, you will get a good yield.
And then this is probably an easy question for you, except I lost it. There it is. Is the dissolved reactive phosphorus the same as orthophosphate?
This is a very professional question. I think the phosphorus expert should be taught. Essentially, the terminology evolved. I'm not sure if we have someone really worked on phosphorus here. Yeah, they can tell you a better story. But in short, the phosphorus testing evolved over time too, and dissolved reactive phosphorus is not exactly the same as orthophosphate, but because the phosphorus level can be very very low, very hard to detect. Many labs they use that represent dissolved reactive phosphorus.
Are the fertilizer rates for both phosphorus and nitrogen related to organic or inorganic sources, or are they for both? Are they the same rates for both?
The rate, when we compare the difference between the source, essentially organic or inorganic, we use the same rates. But again, for the organic ones, it's very hard to say how much the nitrogen content is varied essentially. For example, some says 3 pounds of this manure, pig manure, contains 1 pound of nitrogen. Some may say it's 3 pounds of pig manure contains 1.2. So it's just some uncertainty there. Yeah, we just based on the observation. They say the same. We just take it the same.
Right. I think we're getting to the end of the questions here. Let's see. Now, did you take soil samples? I want to say you did not.
Yeah,
okay.
We just use whatever
There's a question about how deep the soil samples were taken, and I'm like, no, we didn't take soil samples in this. Okay. And I'm not, well, have you monitored the effectiveness of nitrogen and phosphorus reduction programs in oversupplied fertilizers? I'm not quite sure.
No, we did not.
Okay.
Yeah, for this study, no.
Okay. Did the high applications reconcile with higher goal yields, with higher crop yields, I guess?
Yeah, that's the farmer's perception. They tend to over apply to reach maximum avenue to increase the production.
Well, thank you. I think we are at the end of our time. This has been a really informative webinar, and obviously there are a lot of questions. So thank you for taking the time to try to answer those and clarify things. And with that, I will close out the webinar. Much appreciated, Yongping.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone.